which that is going to be our next client that I'm going to introduce you to. Am I doing all right, Robert? I'm not? Okay, great. Okay. This is Teresa. This is my next client, Teresa. And don't forget, whoever is the one who keeps telling me about my 30 minutes. That's awesome. I think maybe I have 20 to go. Okay. So with Teresa, for me, my statement about her was her vitality was gone. You can see it in her eyes. Even though she lives in the South, I was actually able to go and have our first consultation face-to-face because I regularly speak for a clinic there. So I was able to have my consultation with her. And I mean, you honestly could see it in her eyes. I mean, it was like the life had just gone out of her eyes. She was just really just there. Everything was dull about it. She was 210 pounds, 5'8", and for her, she was a self-proclaimed roller coaster dieter since high school. Those are her words. So we've seen different issues, up, down, weight. If whatever was the latest diet craze, fad, pills, she was on it. And she had done it all the way since high school. And when I saw her, I mean, she wasn't severely overweight, but definitely overweight. But what was just blaring at me was just the lack of zest, the lack of vitality. She was really, really down. She was definitely near burnout. I mean, it could just happen at any time. Very extreme fatigue, very high stress. And before I go down to this part, the high stress for her, she was everybody's rescuer. Everybody's rescuer. She was a stay-at-home mom, children grown and gone, but she was still in her children's life, in her grandchildren's life. She worked 2 or 3 jobs at volunteer jobs at charities and churches, and if someone needed something, she had to be the one to do it. She had to take care of them. There was a mindset that was really driving her that said, you're a good person if you help everybody. And that's what she did, even when she had not had enough sleep at night, even when she was really tired. And she said, Camille, I've got to do something about this. I can't keep going like this. And now I try to lose weight. And we live on a farm, and they have a lot of property. They eat their vegetables straight from the ground. They raise cattle. It's everything in the South. And so she felt like she was eating really well. And she'd tell me about all her beautiful whole grains, her grass-fed beef, everything. And she said, but I feel horrible, and look at all this weight. She just kept doing this and touching herself. Look at all of this. And I said, okay, let's see what's going on. But a really outstanding thing, which is why her doctor, which is Dr. Stewart, referred her to me, was because she had horrible pain and inflammation, stiffness in the joints and toes. Her toes were so painful, as she said in her words, that even her bed sheets hurt when she pulled them up on her toes. She did not even want to go to bed at night because when she pulled her covers up, she had the worst pain in her toes ever. And she couldn't figure out what was going on at the time. I don't know if she had spent enough time with the doctor or not, but she didn't know what was going on. Can anybody guess what was going on? Just a wild guess. What'd you say? Inflammation. Yeah, most definitely. Inflammation. Yep. Well, I'll tell you why. Let's see here. Well, we'll go here. What was causing all of the pain in her toes was the grains that she was eating. I used the IFM personal appraisal, so she filled all that out. And we looked at some of her food intolerances, but we didn't have an ALCAT at the time or anything. But looking at everything, the one thing that was just underlying everything were those grains, all the grains, every one of rice, anything. We took her off all the grains, and it only took about a week, and she had no more pain in her toes. She could go to bed absolutely comfortable. Absolutely comfortably, but even more so, she dropped the weight fast. I mean, fast. But I'll tell you what we did with the nutritional supplements, but grains really hurt her. It slowed her down, and it hurt her so much. But making sure that she was on an absolutely grain-free diet changed everything. But before there, she said, I'm so tired of being there for everyone, but I have no choice. I can't say no. I have so many people and doctors who say, I can't say no. That's going to be a huge set shift we're going to make. Why it's okay to say no and not feel guilty about it. She was also always slumped and her head was down because she was very tired. She had frequent crying spells, a disinterest in friends, hobbies, low libido, everything. And of course, just eating grains made her very sleepy and she absolutely felt drugged. Only when she had her sprouted grains did she feel okay, but she didn't feel drugged, but she felt very, very tired. That was a problem for her. So what we did, again, we took her off the grains. These are some supplements that I used for her because I figured out she had an issue with the lipopolysaccharides. What happened and why did I have to work it very slowly with her? The one thing I'm not telling you, that I didn't tell you, I'm not telling you, is that she had a face just full of skin eruptions. Even though she was in her 50s, she looked like a teenage acne. It was all over her face. She had taken a product from a certain company that looked like a good product, but it was to help with liver detoxification and fat emulsification. She did it just right, but when she took it, her entire face just erupted. And that of course, she was very self-conscious about that. It looked really bad for her, not just her forehead, but forehead, cheeks, chin, everything. So in addition to having all of this pain, she had all of these breakouts. So with her, I had to go very, very slowly. I couldn't use the Paleo Cleanse plus DF. I couldn't even use the amino detox. I could only use the LVGB or the N-acetylcysteine, and I had to go one at a time. The main thing was getting her off the grains so she would be relaxed. Then, meaning her body would be relaxed. Then I would have to use one product at a time because her body was so angry that it would automatically respond with inflammation in the form of weight gain and skin eruptions. And yes, she was on antibiotics from her doctor because that was the only thing that could control it. Today, she's not even on that antibiotic. The doctor took her off because she doesn't need it. We did well with the pre-phage, and I had to do the pre-phage, as you know, it's the bacterial phages product we have, rather than the probiophage, because she did have SIBO, and she couldn't have the lactobacillus acidophilus. She had the overgrowth of she had the lactic acid overgrowth. She couldn't do that one. She did really well, just fine with the pre-phage. And that helped so much to keep her from inflaming. She did really well with the LVGB, not so much with the amino detox. I didn't even want to try it because, again, her body was so sensitive. She did well with the phosphatidylcholine, and I think she needed a bit more of a creation of acetylcholine to help her with relaxation, and did really well with the N-acetylcysteine. She did have oxidative stress. After the pain, her skin began to clear up, but more than anything, she lost her 39, 40 pounds. I think today now it's like 43. But her doctor wanted me to tell you guys, because she knew that I was going to be talking to you. She said, look, I see this patient every day. What I love about her weight loss, because she lost it so fast, I honestly thought she was going to look sullen and dull, but her skin is glowing. And her cheeks aren't sunken in or anything. She looks wonderful. She said, please tell them if you use it just right, you can lose weight, and you can lose weight rapidly without looking like you're cachexic or anything. So she really looks great. And we just had to do it slowly. And we had to, and her doctor's taking the case now, but she's working with her with the SIBO and the lipopolysaccharides, the coating, and we're going to actually, which we had already started using the inflammatory, but we're going to add the nattocerezymes as well, so it can take care of the biofilm on that lipopolysaccharides and really help her. And we're using for her L-glutamine, not the GI Revive. Love the GI Revive, but again, her body's so sensitive and so angry, she can't even take combinations of things. We have to just do one at a time. So L-glutamine works really well for her just to begin to repair her gut lining. So as long as we go slowly, we're great. We do Digestzymes and Allergyzyme as needed, because since she dropped all the grains, and she has no problem saying no to grains now. She doesn't have the dopamine issue. She has no problem with it. We don't need them so much. But if she has to go out for some type of outing or special event, she's going to be armed with her Digestzymes and with her Allergyzymes. And she's the type, she was didn't have a problem with the exercise. She would exercise because she works on her farm and with her animals. That was not a problem. The problem was she was doing her exercises and all of her movement and activity when she shouldn't have, because she was already spent. I mean, just spent, because she was helping everyone. But she would do them at nighttime, in the evening. Worst time to do it in her condition. So of course that interrupted her sleep. That made things worse. So we had to change that, where she would do it in the day, but then she would even cut that more than in half because it was too much for her. And she couldn't get away because with anything, because when she Skyped, I could see it in her face. I would know if there was any breakouts, or her eyes, which her eyes became alive and radiant and beautiful. It was really great. But if she dared to do way too much or she slipped, it would really show up in her face. So with her, in addition to eating grain-free, and I sent her to againstallgrains.com, and she's a person who loves cookbooks. So we worked with the grain-free table, the grain-free family table by Carrie Vitt. I also had her do bone broths. She was fine. At first I had to check that out because everybody seems to do well with bone broth except for, say, people who have chicken pox or shingles, because it's got so much arginine in it that it will worsen the shingles and cause you to have that outbreak, which I didn't bring this client, but I do have a client who is so burned out that she has recurrent shingles, just recurrent. So she can't do bone broth or other arginine containing things, but it worked really well with Teresa. I had to instruct her to even stay away from carrageenan because she would break out with it and she'd inflame. And we found out she had carrageenan in her toothpaste, of all things. She wasn't doing the coconut milk with carrageenan, but it was in her toothpaste and it was causing her problems. Her big mindset shift, I had to teach her to please say no. Consider saying no and not feeling guilty about it, because we need you to be fully charged. And my whole thing is to work her up to where she can take our DFH Complete Multi, and where she can take mitochondrial energy or Mito PQQ, because I want to continue to build her energy. But again, because she's so sensitive and so reactive, I had to do one thing at a time and work from the foundation with just L-glutamine and just inflammatone. I know that's kind of a complex supplement, but it really worked with the inflammation for her, and the nattocerezymes for her LPS and her prephage. Of all the things on here, I think the prephage was the very best one. And not using the probiotic supreme, not using the probiophage, but using the prephage. She didn't react to it, and I didn't have to worry about her increasing in lactic acid. And then I had her read this book called Boundaries. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of that book, but it shows you how to set up boundaries in your life. And so she really appreciated it, brought more clients, but she's a whole new lady now. She absolutely has her vitality. And again, we flipped her exercises to where she does less than half of what she was doing before, and she's doing them in the daytime. And I have her doing stretches. Is my 30 minutes up yet, or is it just like 10 minutes or so? I just want you guys, I have about 5. Okay, I just want you guys to participate because it's so important. And again, I'll explain it more as I go, but I'm going to tell you, in addition to my confession, I'm going to tell you what the doctors tell me and why they like to do this, and how to keep the doctors, all of you, out of positions where she finds herself, which I do really have a question, but does anyone here have a problem saying no? Or do you go beyond the call of duty with your patients? Anybody? 1, 2, 3, okay, a few people. You're really safe here, believe me. I won't even, because I'm not that great at remembering names. I won't remember names. I won't go and tell. Yeah, it's being recorded, but don't worry, they didn't see you. But I'm just telling you, please, you're safe here. You can do this. But this is huge. Why is this huge? Because I'm beyond just doing weight loss. I am working with rebounding weight gain, and I'm looking at more than just the root cause. Again, I'm looking at whatever that switch is that keeps putting you in that vicious cycle that keeps you gaining the weight. That's why we call it innovative strategies, because we really are looking at this. And you'll even begin to see, I brought a few books here that I like. As a matter of fact, one is Dr. Stephen Masley's new book, Smart Fat. Have you guys heard about that book? It just came out on the 19th. Do you like that book? Have you read it yet? Okay, it's a really good book about that. He has a whole chapter in there just about what I'm talking about. The stress response, not saying no, how you really have to communicate. It's best to communicate with your patients about this, not to pretend to be a psychiatrist or anything, but just to help them consider it and to help them see that you're doing that too. It will make the difference. Then they won't come back to you and to try to demoralize you and say, well, why didn't this supplement work? And why am I not losing the weight? Why am I still gaining the weight? Because you're looking at the whole person, and it's all working together. So when they do all of these things like she did, and she's having fun eating grain. Oh, I'm sorry, did you?
Oh, no, I was just saying it's mind, body, and spirit. They all have to
Be working together, exactly. But yeah, so doing all of these things and meticulously working with her supplements and not going around and sabotaging it, going full circle and sabotaging it, she'll end up keeping that loss of the 40 pounds. And her skin will stay clear because, we want to fight the inflammation because the inflammation is the cause of the depression anyway. Like what we were saying about the whole quinolinic acid and so on. If there's depression, if there is even anxiety, more than likely there's some inflammation going on in the brain, in the gut. You got the vagus nerve communicating, or as a pathway to communicate between those two. So we want to do everything we can to not just correct the inflammation, but cause them from participating in those behaviors that send them to the foods that cause it. Because it was very distressing that I couldn't just jump in there with the paleo cleanse, which I will be able to do it soon, or I couldn't just jump in there with the GI Revive because I saw how sensitive she was. But because it worked and it worked well, she was able to use those things, see it work, and now she's going to stay on the path and do the rest, everything else she has to do. But we've got to get the gut right. We've got to take care of that lining, and I think she'll be really compatible. I mean, 40 pounds, I think she looks great, but she still wants to lose 10 more pounds or so. But these were some of her comments. Just a quick update, I'm doing great. I'm losing weight, down the 32 pounds. I've only had a couple of minor breakouts, nothing major. Thank you so much. This is taken from her email. I have so much energy and I'm sleeping like a rock every night. And I'd say my moods are pretty balanced most days. My mountains are now molehills and some are completely gone. And as of January 10th, her total weight loss was 40 pounds. But I like this where she says my mountains are now molehills, because seriously, any little thing she'd blow right up. And I think that was because of the inflammation in her brain. It made her that way very easily. So that was huge. And again, I didn't coach her on that. This is just what she said, and it's in her email. I keep all those emails. But I'm happy because she's absolutely sleeping like a rock because she doesn't have all that inflammation drowning her now. I think she'll always be on the inflammatone for a while. It works really well with her. Okay, so before we get to Becky, we can get up now. Time to move. Okay, so thank you very much. Thanks for everybody coming up here exercising. We're going to do some more. So, but you feel good, right? You're not sitting too much or anything. You feel great? Okay, good. Okay, my next client I would like to introduce you to is Becky. And Becky is 62 and she's 5'8", and she came to us at 195.5 pounds. Believe it or not, that 0.5 is very important because she said 0.5. You'll get to know her. She has the driver personality, and I was warned ahead of time by the referring physician. Every I has to be dotted and every T has to be crossed and everything. Honestly, if it's going to be done right, she has to do it. But if she does let you do it, she's going to tell you exactly how to do it and make sure you're on your job, you're doing everything. She makes sure you're doing your nutrition right, everything. This is Becky. The reason she was sent was because of her, as you can see, hemoglobin A1C. It was 7.0. even though I don't have it on the slide, I have it on a paper there on the table, her actual lab from the doctor from her center, so you could see it. But her hemoglobin A1C was 7.0. And no wonder, too, she has malaise and fatigue. Very, very tired. And she was tired of being tired. But there were certain connections she wasn't making. She had very compromised mobility. It was very, very difficult for her to get up and down a staircase, and she had a staircase in her home, so that made it even worse. It was very interesting with her because, in her opinion, she ate fine all throughout the day. She ate well, she ate healthy, because remember, every I has to be dotted and every T crossed. So she's read the books, she's looked at the things, so she eats perfectly well, except for in the evenings. For some reason, in the evenings, at the time it was for some reason, she would have huge portion sizes of her carbs, and she would do this every evening. Also, in the evening, someone has already figured it out. He already knows. But this is what she would do. It would be great all day long, except for the evening. Also, remember how I told you when she was helping people, because she is over several groups in a certain organization in which she serves, and she would make sure that they got everything meticulously right, even though she didn't get everything meticulously right, and she'd give herself quite a few breaks. I learned this when we first started working together, and I talked to her about her diet. I talked to her about the importance of not eating the wrong types of carbs and of staying away from certain sugars and all of that. And of course that's right, that's what you do, and I'm going to do it, and make sure you have this written down, and da-da-da-da-da, all of this. But then she had to go on vacation to Martha's Vineyard, and she asked me, and it surprised me, if she could have a certain type of sugary type food for breakfast, because she said you can't go to Martha's Vineyard and not eat that. And I was wondering, I said, and I didn't say it this way, but I thought, you have a hemoglobin A1C of 7.0 and you're asking me if you could start your breakfast off with this super sweet thing just because that's what you do in Martha's Vineyard? I mean, you've bothered me day in and day out about making sure I've done this, I've got this, I've got that, but then you're giving yourself this big break and you're wanting me to give you permission to eat that? And I said, first I just said, no, that would not be a good idea. I mean, we've got to stop this glycation going on in you. And she's pretty well read, but I always explain everything. You know, we're trying to do the opposite. We're going to get some good fats, and we're going to get great protein, and we definitely don't want to start your breakfast off with some huge carb that you've got to deal with. No. And she'd just keep going and asking me. Even when she was there, she'd say, well, can I just, do this? It would be easier. And she didn't have a problem like Evelyn, where it was, I don't care what happens to me. I don't care how I'm going to feel, because she didn't have that type of inflammation to where it would get her gut, and she didn't care about anything. She just had to have the comfort. She just, for some reason, really wanted to do this. And I'm telling you this because it's going to have an effect on how I talked to her and how I dealt with her and how I changed her mind about that. But again, I'm still watching her, because she would end up, when she wasn't on vacation, doing really well, except for in the evenings when she'd do so many carbs. So with her, this was her mindset. So let's just move there, because I'm looking at everybody's mindset. I'm not spying on them, not just making them feel badly. I'm just listening to them. I just want to see where they are and where they came from. Whatever, intuition, I just want to know them. Here's what she said a lot. I'm bored, but when I am fortunate enough to be working, so much is expected of me. I am, after all, in charge. First, I'm bored. Please know that this is very different from I have low motivation. She did not have low motivation. Evelyn had low motivation. This lady was just really, really bored. And I finally figured out one of the reasons that she was so bored is because she would do so much. She would do everything, and it would kind of raise her adrenaline levels. She'd just be on this, like an adrenaline junkie. She'd be really high, and then she'd crash. And then it was boring. By the end of the day, it's boring. Things are happening. Let's eat. Wow. Okay. She didn't have any balance. She lived in extremes. She started to show symptoms, in my opinion, I said at first, of OCD, at the very least of perfectionism. I was even able to prove this on a neurotransmitter test that I'll show you, but she did. She was very obsessive, compulsive. I just love getting a kick out of watching this one doctor among you. He's laughing. He knows. He so knows. I'm so glad, because you think, am I just crazy? Is it just me? But I can see that you see too. But yeah, she started to show these symptoms, and I guess it had been that way for a while, and that's what the doctor was trying to tell me. And she just said, just be ready, because don't let her annoy you, don't let her offend you, but everything just has to be just so. She's a bit obsessive about it. I said, okay. She herself said she was hard on family members and on associates at her church. She said, I'm not mean, and she doesn't mean to be mean. She's just very, very picky and perfectionistic. Some people called her overzealous. Her own family said she was just overzealous. That's just how she was. So, okay, so how'd you grow up? What is it? Well, okay, again, she is part of an organization, and she's in charge of a lot of things, and it just has to be done right. And she just really made a lot of demands on people and on herself, but she would give herself a break. Okay, let me make sure. Okay, what I found out was that OCD, wait a minute, make sure I didn't miss anything. Okay, OCD is characterized in people whose brain levels are higher in dopamine than in serotonin. So instead of it being just low in everything, it was higher in dopamine than serotonin. And symptoms of this include perfectionism. You can never get the carrot. And a total lack of flexibility, which totally described her, at least most of the day. A total lack of flexibility. It's your way or the highway. And that's really how she was. And I read that, I thought, oh, I want to find out. Let's see what her labs look like if she'll so indulge me. Let's see what's going on here. And these are her values. Her dopamine in this particular group was 242.33, and the range is 125 to 175. And her serotonin is 120, lower, and her dopamine's definitely higher than her serotonin. And she's never once, ever complained about being depressed or down. She definitely complained about being bored. She definitely, if anything, she might complain about being a little bit anxious, but not to that crippling anxiety where it's just this issue, but just because it's got to be more, it's got to be done. So this was her. This was her. And even her histamine levels are up at 46. So that kind of started to explain some things, why she was over-focused and over-analytical and so demanding. But I still wanted to know, with a personality like this and everything having to be so perfect, what was happening in the evenings that suddenly you weren't so perfect anymore? And that wasn't my word. That was her word. My word is excellence, and let's up and down, let's kind of work on these habits. Can anybody figure out maybe a guess why things fell apart in the evening? True, nothing. She came back home, and it's just her. Well, and her husband, nothing to control. That's it. Yeah, we're looking at cortisol. It's exactly. It has to do with cortisol. As a matter of fact, these were her adrenal values. Cortisol's great, great, great. But then when we got to the evening around 4 o'clock, let me see, make sure. No, the 4 o'clock cortisol, that wasn't great. That was high. And then her low cortisol really at nighttime at 8 p.m., because they take that, was 5.2. But look at the one before dinner at 4 p.m. So I don't know if this was secondary hypercortisolism or primary, but she definitely was really high in her cortisol in the evening. And as a result of her being high in her cortisol in the evening, I think I skipped one, but she began to crave the carbs. Her cortisol being so high for her made her crave the carbs. So she would have more of her carbohydrates and sweets, and she'd keep going and not stop, because that's how she dealt with it. So in addition to her dopamine being so much higher than her serotonin, and in addition to that, her cortisol levels were also up. And that was causing her to deal with it by getting in more of her carbs. And I don't even think she realized that she was giving herself so much of a break while not giving other people a break. But she just knew that this is what was driving her. And as a result, she became first pre-diabetic and then went into basically diabetes, the whole hemoglobin A1C 7.0. It was really hard for her. So I had to start working not just with her supplements, but also with the way she thinks. But I really want to focus on the supplements with her because her hemoglobin A1C right now is 5.7. And it was amazing because of the metabolic synergy and the Sensitol. It's so funny because every year I have a new favorite product. And my favorite product now is Sensitol because it's just done so much. But we were able to successfully get her down to 5.7. And we're doing even more. And I'll show you in a second here what she said. But her metabolic synergy, 3 capsules a day, and I could do this freely because I started off with her GI Revive powder, which she had no problems taking, and her Probiotic Supreme, because I feel someone that stressed is going to affect the gut, because we know stress affects the gut. So it definitely needed to be addressed. So she had no problems doing her GI Revive and her Probiotic Supreme. She did not have a lot of food intolerances or anything. She just had this blood sugar that was just going crazy, and we just needed to optimize even her absorption more, while at the same time helping her to relax her hold on people and things. Giving the metabolic synergy, 3 capsules twice a day with food, so that she won't feel the discomfort of the green tea acting on her on an empty stomach. It worked really well. And her Sensitol, 2 capsules. Actually, she had 2 capsules twice a day on an empty stomach. I didn't write the rest, but 2 capsules twice a day on an empty stomach. Doing that very faithfully brought her hemoglobin A1C down. And we have the evidence of that as well. But I did give her Catechol-Calm, 3 capsules after dinner, because I wanted her to have food on her stomach, but I started to work that so that she could calm down. And she had a pretty early dinner, so it wasn't a problem. And she's so hyper, Catechol-Calm didn't really make her sleepy. Some people it makes sleepy, especially if you're a very, very thin person, it makes you very sleepy. But other people, it just relaxes deeply. With her, it was enough to calm her down, enough to bring those levels down so that she could relax in the evening. And slowly but surely, we weren't making demands of eating so much in the evening. But that was just such a big clue, because how could someone eat so well throughout the day and then just go crazy with portions in the evening? The Catechol-Calm worked for her. Balancing the blood sugars worked for her. She loved this book, the Blood Sugar Solution Cookbook. She's definitely someone who has to go by diagrams. She's not the person, because some people don't want cookbooks, or they don't want a list of things. Everybody's different. For her, she wanted something she could point to, underline, whatever. Mark Hyman's blood sugar solution was perfect for her. She loved it. And for her, a big pleasure center was her daughter coming to her saying, "Mom, you look so great. You look so great." And most of her weight, well, a noticeable part of her weight was abdominally. It was 100% abdominally. And that can be explained too by that cortisol level. But her stomach, it's not totally flat or anything, but she definitely began to lose the weight in her abdomen. I mean, the big thing was that we got her down to 5.7. That was awesome. But her blood pressure came down. She started to lose the weight. We started to let her know that fats were okay for her to eat as long as they were healthy fats. At the time, that book wasn't out, so I used other things, but I got her more comfortable each time with coconut oil, avocado oil, olive oil, raw nuts, all of these things, just to help her cell membrane permeability. When she was already doing wonderful nutritional shakes, so it's very easy for me to say just add a little bit of phosphatidylcholine inside of that as well. It was awesome. So she did really well with that and followed that to a T. She also used the Omega Bell Lemon Drop Smoothie, and I definitely wanted that one because for her it tasted really good. Again, her Catechol-Calm, Sensitol, and Metabolic Synergy. But with her lifestyle and mindset strategies, I did for her a call to what I call a call to accountability. So I just kind of turned the tables on her and just said, okay, I want you to be accountable to you the way you're causing other people to be accountable to you. It didn't look so good after a while because she could finally see what it was like to have a boss like her. So I said, okay, so instead of being so demanding, let's just be accountable. And let's start with your evening meals. And I'm going to give you some help. I'm going to give you Catacola Calm. And we're going to have this multi, which happens to be metabolic synergy. And at the same time, we're going to look at areas where you'll be accountable to me for such things as not eating dessert for breakfast just because you're in Martha's Vineyard and all. It got to the point where I even told her that I feel so strongly about her being accountable to me for that I can't even work with you if you won't do that. If you're going to keep asking me for that and keep telling me to give you permission to do it, because she wouldn't do it unless I gave her permission, we're just in a sense done, because it would just be better. I want us to leave happy, and she didn't want that. And she didn't get upset at me. She didn't say, I'll never speak to you, but it made her more endeared to me, actually, because I set up a standard for her and she followed it. And being able to see the things right there in front of her face, the evidence really helped as well. So it helped her to be more accountable. Also, I had her doing aerobic style cardio, because that's really the best for people with high dopamine levels, and it improves insulin sensitivity and sugar utilization. And I had her exercise only during the day. After that, I had her switch to the interval training. That would be the next phase. And some of you already came up and saw it, but I like metabolic aftershock, and that's at www.metabolicaftershock.com. That's Jade Tata. And I think if you've been listening to Designs for Health, Clinical Rounds, you've heard them speak on there before. But his metabolic aftershock is the same as short bursty, high intensity exercises, or high intensity interval training. So instead of doing all of this endurance exercises where you're running or walking for a long time, or jogging for a long time, or cycling for a long time, which can be hard on the heart, we had her do the short burst training in her phase 2, because it was so much better for her and more expedient for her to lose weight doing it that way. Plus she had the energy to do it, and we did that during the day. It worked really well. And it would be really great to look at metabolic aftershock, but even if you do YouTube or so, they have lots of examples of short intensity interval training, and those work really well. But first I had her, again, do the cardio exercises aerobic style. And I want to show you that I had her work with resistance bands, because she at first had such a hard time with mobility. Honestly, when we helped to decrease all of that sugar and all of those things that were going into her system, she didn't have so much inflammation. So her mobility began to improve. It's similar to the lady that we had to take off the grains because she was hurting so much, but she didn't have that big of a problem with the grains, but she definitely had a big problem with excess sugars and so on. So when we took her off of that, she definitely could move. And what I typically do is I give her the first set of nutrition summary notes detailing what all is going on. And in my follow-up notes, we have a record of where she improved. And the first two things, because she didn't have any way of knowing her hemoglobin A1C at that time, the first two things that she said was, I can move upstairs better. If I can move upstairs better, I can exercise better. And she says, my daughter says I look great. My daughter says I look great. And so she was really happy about that. We would hear that all the time. So it was easier to get her to do exercises. Does anybody work with resistance bands? Do you like them pretty well? Okay. Well, I had her work with the resistance bands, and you're going to be my volunteer too, but I only show one exercise. That's my quota. So, and I just had her, well, I had her start off with I think it was the red one. That's the weakest one. But you can do exercises like this. But I had her do them a lot faster when she was able to build up, and she could do that even at 60-something. But I got this from resistancebands.com, and they have resistance bands examples on that site. But since we have a lady here, a doctor who does resistance bands, would you come up and show a couple of exercises that you suggest with the resistance bands? You can't do it? Okay, because of mobility. Can anybody do it? Oh, you will? Okay.
I usually did just one strap. That's the circular one.
Yeah.
That was different.
Okay, yeah, I've seen those. Do you know how to do them?
I do that.
Okay. I told you, I warned you ahead of time. We're going to do these things interactively because we're models. We're not just teachers. Doctor means teacher. We're not just teachers.
And so I'm not, you want me to teach an
Yeah,
exercise?
sure, please.
Well, I mean, I'm doing them with like a P90X program, really. You guys have done P90X before? How many have done P90X? Yeah.
Do you like
So-
P90X too?
Yeah.
People
so
can't do it.
I'll do, instead of weights, I'll do some of the exercises with a resistance band. I don't actually use this type of band. This
Okay.
TheraBand makes them.
Oh,
tubes,
okay.
The tube ones. So I'll use those. What is one that I'm just trying to, I'm talking as I'm trying to remember what exercise. Somebody remind me of one from, you had a great one, that's great.
Oh, okay.
Let's see.
I saw one where a guy put it right behind his back and they were doing this type of exercise.
That's a great one.
That's
if
on.
You're trying to do your pecs or whatever.
Yeah.
You're trying to like actually do something like a push-up.
That's
That's
exactly
fine.
what he did.
Right. So that's a great start for people who don't do push-ups, and then transition to the wall, and then do some, and then eventually get down to the floor. That's my.
Thank
my
you.
demonstration.
Thanks. And that gives people so much hope because they think they have to be in the gym all the time. But remember how I said that your own nutritional approach is very unique, very individualized. So whereas I would suggest this to her, I might not suggest it to someone else. But for her, it worked really well. I don't think she would have done well on the stability ball at all, not at all. I mean, because she's just been so afraid of her whole mobility. But she can do this. I mean, she can stand up and just do different bands. I even have an easier band. This is the green one, so it's a little bit harder. But this is for my people who are just way too sedentary, and I don't allow them to sit and do the bands. I make them get up and do anything they can think of, with the stretches. But we do have videos to show you how to work with these. But this is when I have to really get them used to moving in the first place. Because if they sit for an hour, they're going to sit for 2 hours and 3 hours. Where they find the time to watch that kind of TV or sit that long, I'm not sure, but they actually do it. So this is how I start to change their minds about it, start to move it, start to work with something. Then another big one that I use is kettlebells. And I use this with Becky, but I also used it with the next client I'm about to introduce you to. And he's a guy, and I'll tell you about